morning, good afternoon actually. Good afternoon to our participants. Buon pomeriggio ai partecipanti che sono nell'aula con me. Good afternoon, I think, because I would say that most of the participants connected online are English-speaking participants. So allow me, if you don't mind, to make this brief introduction in English. Sorry for my voice that I actually lost yesterday. What a good moment for losing the voice. For me, it's the first time, I think, after 2 years that I'm actually welcoming participants or attendees in a face-to-face activity. And I think it's a good sensation, honestly speaking. So I'm glad to see you on the campus. Usually the campus is full of participants from all parts of the world. And this is one, I would say, of the most beautiful room of the ITC ILO. And it's good to see some people again in the room. My name is Myriam Boudra. I'm at the center of the International Training Center. I'm the responsible for the labor migration component, the labor migration cluster. And I had the chance with some people of my team that I will introduce briefly to work on this project over the past 3 years. And I also quite honored to say that actually, if I were understanding, this is the very last activity of the project, and what a journey. So I'm very happy to be with you and to share this afternoon session with you, for the ones that are with us in this room, but also for the participants that are joining us on via Zoom. I think the good point also is for you to know is that some of the people who join from Zoom are not only European participants. We do have, I had a look to the people registered, we do have people that are connected from Sri Lanka, that are connected from South Africa, that are connected from Costa Rica. These are many participants coming from the ITC ILO network of former participants, experts. I know that there are some participants that was coming from Geneva, from colleagues from Geneva, connecting this afternoon. And I think it's a good chance as well to give some visibility of the great work that has been done by the project, and some initiative also happening in Europe, and giving, some windows outside of Europe, what some measures that we're taking, very concrete measures that we're taking in some European cities at the local level. So I think it's a great opportunity, and I'm glad also that in a way ITC ILO can be this kind of facilitator and giving more visibility to the actions provided by the project. For those who were there this morning, you had a chance to have an overview of the different actions that were taken, different measures taken during the project. And this afternoon, it's a bit for us the idea of what's happened in the background. So what worked well, what was more challenging, what were some of the opportunities, how we see some sustainability. And the whole idea of this afternoon is to have this reflection together, and also to know what can be some way forward. I have a chance as well to welcome, and they are present online. So Cynthia, that is connecting from Brazil, and she's actually, I see her. Ciao, Cynthia. So she actually has been, from the ITC ILO side, the main person involved in the project. She has been the figure of ITC ILO in this project, and I would like to warmly thank her for that. So she will be from Brazil, joining us to comment a bit and to try to facilitate. She does have a very challenging connection, so if by any chance she's not able anymore to take the floor, I will step in. And we also have the chance to have with us one expert with whom I'm working since many years, former ILO officials.
Un ex funzionario dell'ILO.
Senior expert on migration and economic integration of migrant in labor market, Andrea Salvini, who will be with us, in particularly during the second part of the afternoon, commenting the presentation that are done by our guest speakers during this first part. Without further ado, let me also then give the floor to Miranda Andreazza, who from APL, Agenzia Piemonte del Lavoro, will give you a kind of brief introduction, making bridges between what happened this morning and what will happen this afternoon. And we will also have a very short videos, and particularly for participants joining online, to better understand what are some of the forward actions and activity and what happened during these 3 years. But before that, Miranda, I give you the floor. Grazie mille Miranda e ti lascio la parola.
Thank you very much, Miranda. You have the floor. Thanks a lot, Miriam. Thanks to all of you. I would like to introduce you shortly to the video, and I will show it to you, because it really provides us with the opportunity to enter in today's activity. This afternoon, we really mean to give a continuity with the morning. So with the presentation regarding the partnership at its complete level with all parts of the activity. And this afternoon, we really wanted to give the floor to the operators who implemented the project. Therefore, I would like to show you the video, giving the floor to beneficiaries with small introductions and comments by ourselves in APL, but also in job mentoring, who follow the beneficiaries, and then to get back and tell you in a synthetic way what we have done in the project.
Questa è una bellissima mattinata e sono qui per dirvi un grande grazie.
For Work prende avvio nel 2018 e i beneficiari sono i richiedenti asilo ospiti dei centri di accoglienza straordinaria.
Di per sé è un progetto diverso da quelli che vengono proposti di solito per le politiche attive, perché ha avuto un'attenzione ai beneficiari più marcata.
L'obiettivo principale è quello di valorizzare le competenze dei richiedenti asilo volti all'inserimento lavorativo. In particolare le esperienze formali e non formali dei beneficiari avute anche durante il percorso di migrazione o nel loro paese d'origine.
Sono Camaratal, vengo dal Senegal, ho 36 anni e sono arrivato in Italia nel 2017.
Sono Saika, pakistana.
Sono Sosa Sinabalende, sono nigeriana, ho 26 anni.
My name is Naima. I am from Pakistan. I've been in Italy almost 2 years.
Il progetto si sviluppava in diverse azioni. Una prima parte era quella del far emergere le competenze delle persone, le competenze in ingresso, e iniziare a pensare con loro proprio un piano di azione rispetto al loro futuro lavorativo e professionale.
È stato sperimentato l'utilizzo dello EU Skill Profile Tool. La profilazione è una profilazione che prevede una prima parte dove si vanno a sondare quella che è l'istruzione del beneficiario e le esperienze lavorative formali e non formali, e invece c'è poi una seconda parte che va a sondare le soft skills. L'innovazione più grande è quella della possibilità di una compilazione in 2 lingue. Le domande potevano essere lette dal beneficiario nella sua lingua d'origine. Dal termine della compilazione si può scaricare un documento che può essere un sostitutivo del CV, ma con alcune informazioni più complete.
Ho trovato qua di progetto For Work, ho parlato mio di storia, che lavoro io faccio nel mio paese.
I studied in Pakistan as a graduate in science.
Sono una insegnante dal mio paese, insegnante di inglese e computer.
Ho lavorato molto agricoltura e anche di cavalli, di animali.
Altra parte, la parte del job coach, cioè una parte proprio più specifica di ricerca attiva e in concomitanza una serie di proposte formative che partivano dall'italiano piuttosto che dall'educazione civica o da dei corsi anche più specifici, diciamo professionalizzanti.
Basically, for the forward project, it was very helpful.
Loro prima aiutare per mettermi a curriculum a posto, anche mettere su là per cercare del lavoro, per presentare del lavoro quando è arrivata a un ristorante, cosa io dici per loro.
Adesso io ho fatto online un corso di educazione civica e poi io ho fatto un corso di informatica.
Io ho fatto il corso di italiano, sono studiato per l'Italia 4 anni.
I studied A1 and A2. I finished both course, and hopefully in future I will do terza media also.
Ho fatto un corso di aiuto di cuoco, anche ho preso terza media.
We got like more ideas about the computer that we forgot in Pakistan because we didn't get that much time. But with this time we got a lot of time and a lot of things we learned from our computer teacher.
Sicuramente è stato complesso il tenere insieme questa moltiplicità, ma il fatto di aver pensato ai diversi aspetti che possono essere utili ad una persona a livello di sviluppo di competenze e di occupabilità ha fatto sì che potesse dare un'offerta sicuramente più completa.
Poi ho trovato il lavoro che mi piace molto. Prima del lavoro di Torrecino, ho lavorato 3 mesi, poi come ho lavorato bene, il mio di capo lì bisogna un lavoratore. Poi lui mi ha dato il contratto di 1 anno. Faccio oggi di lavoro di fatto di box, dei giorni io devo fare di box, di cavaldato, di mangiare, anche di pulire di là.
Adesso io sono al lavoro in un ristorante, si chiama Caribou. Aiuto un chef per tagliare di verdure, lavapiatti, pulizia. Ma tutti se va bene, non è difficile, è molto facile. Perché cosa io ho fatto è uguale con cosa io ho fatto a casa.
We just come to know that you people are thinking a lot for us. You people are doing something very practical.
We are so thankful about that we did this project because you arranged for us the babysitter. With this time we got a lot of time and a lot of things we learned from our computer teacher.
Se ho trovato soldi, poi mando nel mio di paese, aiutare il mio di famiglia.
If we study and then we can go ahead, then we can search a job for us, we can make us able to do that. This project is very useful.
Io sono contenta e grazie per loro.
Very well. That this gives a full idea of the activities that we have carried out and the complexity in for work. First of all, we have to say that all our activities focused on improving employability of asylum seekers, of guests, and extraordinary reception centers in Italy and, in our case, also in Piedmont. It's been also a part of the project in Albania, but this afternoon we're going to focus on the Italian activities. We were saying that Piedmont was identified as a pilot region due to a series of reasons, especially to widespread reception of asylum seekers in our territory. And AMPAL, that is the leader of the project, decided to present a project to the European Union that could support asylum seekers and refugees in the part concerning job placement and active labor policies. So in order to introduce the several interventions that will take place after mine, I will list the main activities that we have carried out within the project. First of all, I have to say that we selected beneficiaries. It was not done by chance, but it was carried out with a special approach. So it was a counterfactual method, so that provided for a group to attend the activities and for another group to be inserted as a control group. This morning we saw that the project has led to results, and the assessment of a public project is a bit of a novelty for Italy and will have to continue as such also for the next projects. The main interventions, first of all, we have to say that interventions have been personalized, tailor-made. So we tried to provide every beneficiary with a mentor, so with an operator supporting them throughout the project in all activities, and the job mentor was supported by a cultural mediator so as to help the operator to mediate with the beneficiaries' culture, with the language, so as to make them comfortable. The main activities that we're going to present this afternoon are the ones of job mentoring, which is the specific mentoring activity carried out with reception center, with the asylum seekers, which is there are 3 cooperatives that carried out these activities and who dealt with assessing the previous knowledge of beneficiaries with the European tool, of the EU skills profile tool. This European tool, this EU tool, was introduced for the beneficiaries and was used in order to profile beneficiaries. So after this first approach, this first attempt to identify skills, we supported beneficiaries in the recognition of the prior knowledge, of prior skills. So supporting them in recognizing soft skills and hard skills, and to try and understand the living experience of beneficiaries. Now, I'm making it very simple. I'm making a complex discussion very simple now. But another specialized operator that was involved in the activities was the one of the job coach. So that's a specialized operator in the labor market that tried to support the people in labor insertion. So upon this, we opened 122 trainings for the insertion and job placement. After that, we had the entire training activities of these activity had to be changed along the way during the pandemic, but saw the good participation both in civic education courses as well as Italian courses, Italian classes, because with the pandemic we saw the need of teaching Italian, of helping people in these, and then vocational laboratories that were carried out, especially on IT and cooking, and we saw it in the video. I will just add that these training activities were carried out by training activities in Forelea, mainly, which is the mandatory of this contract, COVERFOP, and with the series of training agencies. So it is a whole set of training agencies that supported us throughout this project. I would like to conclude with this. Thank you very much, Miranda. Thank you very much, Miranda. We saw in the video that all migrants come with competencies, but the challenge is trying and integrating the labor market at the local level. It will be very interesting to listen to the different experiences and the forward partners to tell us about the different viewpoints to try and move on towards the challenges that we have to understand, and also with the challenges, because with the video we saw the good results, but it's also interesting to try and understand for them as experts and partners what the difficulties have been and also the solutions that they have found, and also the lessons learned from this experience.
Let me switch back to English and ask our experts to join us at the table. So we have Marco Bellantone, we have Monica Plano, we have Francesca, if I'm not mistaken, as well. We have Janet Utizal, and we have Carla Tonelli, and we have Marta Marotta. Do I have everybody? I think. So. I would like just maybe before giving you the floor to see if Cynthia is hearing me, if she's online, if she can take the floor.
Yes. Hi, Miriam. Ciao. Can you hear me?
Cynthia, yes, you are here.
Okay. Ciao. Bonjour.
Please go ahead.
Okay. I'll take my camera off. I'm having very challenging internet connections these days because we are having a wildfire in the place I live, down in Brazil. So it's very nice to see you all together. I've met many of you over the past year when I was in Italy working for the ITC, and also after that, since I've been working as a consultant for the project. I think we heard a lot this morning about the need of all the partners to adapt to adapt to the situation of the pandemic and then adjust their activities. It happened a little bit like that to us as well. So for the ITC, this meeting, this second share event would have made more sense if it was together with the first one we did in the beginning of September. Ideally, we would have one day long meeting with the two parts, and also with the presence, we would ideally be in a room with representatives of the best, the functioning practices from the EU region that shared their initiatives and also their critical analysis about the implementation of their activities on the 8th of September. And then we would have the nice lunch you had on campus all together. And we would be back in the room in this afternoon to go more deep in the lessons learned by the practitioners directly involved with the Forward project. So ideally, that would have been our suggestion for these events, but we had to adapt a little bit, and we are glad that at the end everything's working out. And I just wanted to give you a little bit of this overview of how things went. So as Miriam, I think Miranda Media made a very good introduction to this afternoon. I would only complement with the second part. I think the first part, we have the colleagues, they're ready to come with very strategic presentations on what their activities were about, the main challenges, lessons, solutions to overcome the challenges, lessons learned. We asked them to tell everything in just 5 slides and use only 10 minutes for the presentation. So that's a challenge in itself. Because in the second part of the afternoon, we'll have a more in-depth discussion. Based on these presentations, we'll be talking about what lessons can be shared, can be, what kind of recommendations can be written, can be developed to other projects that have the same objective of promoting the socioeconomic inclusion of refugees in Europe. So just we'll be focusing on improvements, what could have been done better, and also to think a little bit of replicability. If the Forward, some activities of the Forward project were to be replicated in other regions, in other countries, what would have been, the recommendations for that, and the same with scalability. So if we wanted to increase the numbers, the impact of these activities that are supporting, the socioeconomic integration, what would they be in terms of recommendations? So I'll try. I don't know, Miriam, if you want to take over since we're there. If you want me to be calling the speakers, I'm just really shy with my internet connection.
Thank you, Cynthia. I can take over if you want, and maybe, of course, if you do have questions and comments, please don't hesitate. Iniziamo forse con Tino del Tu, va bene?
All right, so let's start by Marco. So, job mentoring on EU skills profiles tools. So, may I ask the colleagues if they can project his presentation? Here it is. Okay, so you just have to say when they have to go on with the next slide. So, good afternoon. My name is Marco Bellantone. I am one of the job mentors from Koala Consortium participating in the project. The first slide. All right. So here you see the role of job mentors. Of course, I put just 4 bullet points, but you can imagine it was much complex than that. But these are the key ideas anyway. So we have to collect submissions and coordination with the reception centers that were a crucial part in the project. Then we needed to introduce the project to the beneficiaries, of course. Then we needed to meet the beneficiaries. So one important thing one key feature of this project was to have time to spend with the person, because it targeted the beneficiaries so specifically that we could work individually with them day by day and across their path to help them set up their file, their own file, using the EU Skills Profile tool. So we really needed to work together to collect and gather all the information concerning the formal and informal skills and professional experience. So we were with them from the cradle to the grave, from their first candidature to the end. And one fundamental element in this project was the capacity to networking, which supported the whole project, actually. Okay, the main challenges, here we are. The target was so specific, and so this means there are many difficulties. The need to move from one reception center to the other, cultural barriers, which could be partially bridged thanks to the cultural mediators. But anyway, the specific target was a challenge anyway, but luckily we could work on active policies, and that was the third time. Second main challenge was timing. So the project was 2 years long, so the risk of dispersion was so high, but on the other side, the beneficiaries are always in a hurry. They're in a hurry because they want to find a job quickly, they need to send money home, they want to find a house quickly. So timing was really a challenge. And as it was said this morning, since 2018, there were 3-4 changes in the migration policies in Italy. Then also reception centers changed over time. So first they were concentrated in towns, then they were scattered through the territory. So this has been, again, another main challenge. And then, of course, pandemic, because it involved and affected us all. But we could find solutions. So the very first one, and is also one of the assets of the project, is the high level of competence of operators. There were so many partners from public and private sectors, and it was so crucial to relate to professionals, to people who knew what to do and when to do it, especially when dealing with vulnerable subjects and people who have many diverse needs. And of course, the collaboration, not only among professionals, but also with all bodies, private and public, not only partners in the project, but also the others that had to be involved because of their role. Then this path of accompaniment, of mentoring across the board. Of course, there was a fixed number of hours, but it was so long that we could be the reference point along the way. Because, of course, they also asked any kind of questions, how to renew the stay permit, or many diverse questions. This is why the operators had to be very adaptive So our target may have some difficulties in keeping time, may not have the same idea of punctuality for the meetings because of their culture, or they needed to have some more flexible timing because we were dealing with mothers with children that went to school. So all of that had to be taken into account. And then health emergency. So most of our beneficiaries did not have computers available, did not have much knowledge of IT or computer. And so we needed to adapt to use any kind of tools we had available, like smartphones, WhatsApp, and so on and so forth. So flexibility was one of the main assets. And I'm done with it. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Marco. So, looking at your presentation, I see your audience is always in a hurry because they want to be integrated quickly because they need to earn money quickly in order to send money back. And I suppose this poses further challenges on you. Yes, on one side we have beneficiaries that want to find a job quickly because they have their families back home waiting for them to send time. On the other hand, we have long bureaucratic procedures. So this increases anxiety, of course. So on one side, we have long procedures. On the other, we have the need to be quick. Other questions? Of course, if you want to ask questions, don't hesitate to put up your hands. So another interesting thing is about the challenge posed by the change in the different change in legislations. And this makes me think of one fact. This is not only the case in Italy, because there is no consistency between actions at national level and at local level. So this is why we have challenges. Difficult to align to these continuous changes in legislations. Yes, that's true. It's so difficult when you deal with people who were familiar with an existing legislation and then it changes abruptly. So all these changes affected their lives a lot, especially with the relationship with the others, because people end up by being treated differently without knowing why. Thank you. So, may I just check if
some questions? You might want to take the floor if you wanted to intervene. If you can, if your connection allow it. Okay, I would say not for the time being. I also encourage for the. You have a question? Yes. So yes, please, we have a questions, and then also for the participants who are following from Zoom. If you do have questions, please don't hesitate to use the chat box. Please go ahead.
In italiano, va bene? Ok. Abbiamo visto stamattina molto chiaramente che a un certo punto del progetto...
This morning, we saw that there was an abrupt change from face lessons to online lessons. I remember you sent timing and curricula. We see that from face-to-face lessons, we had to change overnight. So what kind of impact did it have on your project? Was it effective? Did it bring advantages or disadvantages? And do you think you could nurture your relationship with your beneficiaries anyway, or did it affect it negatively? So the deadline was the 7th of March 2020. That was the day in which pandemic blew out in Italy, and so the regional authorities banned and prohibited all activities in groups and in presence. So at first, of course, it was a sort of chaotic condition because we needed some time to adjust, but we tried to find the best way to do that, and it was WhatsApp call in the end. So there are some pros and cons, as in anything in life. So, of course, the virtual relationship can never be the same as seeing people in presence, as you could see, because there are cultural and language barriers. And so when you see somebody remotely, you cannot seize nonverbal language. With the help of the mediators, we could try and limit the disadvantages, not only for the languages, but also for the differences in cultures, because many times the cultural mediators did not really need to explain the word that I was saying, but explain the situations in such a way that it could be clearly understood by the other persons. Of course, there were also some advantages because there were people who had some petty jobs and preferred to have a WhatsApp call, even mothers with very small children. So that was very useful. Thank you. So if there are no further questions, I thank Marco for his interesting presentation. And because you made many references to cultural mediations, maybe Jeanette, I'm gonna ask you something more about that. For the moment, I leave the floor to Monica or Francesca. Francesca, right? Okay. So may I have Francesca's presentation on the screen, please? All right, so I was a job coach, and in particular, I was in charge of job placement through assessment tools. In particular, the activities we carried out included guidance and career counseling, helping the beneficiaries to gather the records concerning their professional lives. First and foremost, concerning their training, the training that they may have attended, but also information concerning experiences, expectations, and constraints that people may have. Based on that, we could draft together with the beneficiary a skills assessment in order, and a portfolio of skills in order to identify specific goals and a professional profile, so that all of them could feel the protagonist of their own life, could feel they could have the opportunity to choose a job they like and not just something they have to accept because it's what it's available. Then beneficiaries were also accompanied in the drafting of an individual and personal plan to reach this goal. Across a multiple stage path. So, after the first part, which was common for everybody, we had to help them make active search in order to use the traditional means to apply for jobs. So, for example, review of resumes or drafting of an ad hoc resume for a specific job application, or using the right terminology to describe previous experiences. And then we also help them preparing the job interview. Again, trying to focus on the right terms and vocabulary to be used in a working environment. We also tried to explore also the different channels of active search for a job. All these actions were aimed at empower them, to make them become the protagonist of their own life, to provide them with the tools they will need to move around in the labor market. So with an eye on the future. So of course, we also wanted to match offer and demand and increase the knowledge of beneficiaries on the existing job placement and job agency, employment agencies existing in the territory. In addition to that, we even engaged in scouting activities, scouting as a targeted search as compared to the profiles of our beneficiaries. So we contacted businesses directly proposing our beneficiaries as candidates, and we would help them through the path up to the job interview. That was in order to create some entry gates for them into the labor market. On the contrary, those who were included in traineeship or in jobs, placed in jobs, or in tutoring activities, not only to keep their job, but also to check the experiences gained during the job. We accompanied them in a long path.
Obviously, this one, as many other projects, placed us facing different challenges. Some deriving from the historical situation we are living in, that is the pandemic, the sanitary emergency, and some due to the target we have been working with. Certainly, the lockdown effect that coincided with the beginning of the job coaching activity made us readjust all our interventions. And our intervention with many beneficiaries, unfortunately, did not occur in presence, and therefore it was more difficult to grow relationships. There is another challenge that is given by the entire process that proved to be really challenges, because several parties were involved, several different roles, and therefore a solution to this was the fact of being able to coordinate with the different parties and try and exchange continuously with the different stakeholders, for example, with job coaches and job mentors and mediators, and with the reception center operators. Certainly, the social economical crisis has brought to a reduction of working opportunities for beneficiaries. And there too, we had to readapt ourselves. So difficulties emerged also this morning. We had a moment of blockage. It was not possible to activate trainings. The peculiarity of trainings, many companies found themselves in difficult situations, in economic situation, because of the fact of guaranteeing the payment of some indemnities for the trainings made so that some interventions were done over time. Another challenge was facing beneficiaries with a scarce knowledge of the Italian language, and mediation solved the problem there. Another factor that has to be considered a true challenge was the conciliation of the activity time with working times, and this made emerge how sometimes we need more an income than the need of working. So many times we met women, maybe new mothers, who had newly become moms, who first of all needed the assistance and care instead of a job, despite the need of an income. And also the expectations concerning incomes, they not always combined with the real situations. In fact, large work was carried out on handing down the knowledge that carrying out a training is something worth it in the long run, because it's useful to make one's position more placeable in the market. But sometimes people are more pushed by an immediate need. And then, as it was already mentioned this morning, we had to face people moving out, so the need of mobility, the need of moving from a place to another, and become unreachable from one day to another. Let's say that the situations that we found are the ones that I already mentioned. So therefore I will go straight to the reflection that we have made with Job Coach. So certainly this project was very useful, and it led to intense work of mediation that has not been just a classic translation service, but helping us to understand and turn into practice the needs of beneficiaries, and also helping them to have a different viewpoint as to the context where they are inserted. We also assessed how it is necessary to have good results. The fact of working in a network and offering a multidimensional service, taking into account the various needs of people, and not only taking care solely of the working needs. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. If you have no questions, I would like to ask you a couple of questions. By listening to your presentation, if I may, so I am wondering whether with the crisis you saw other types of opportunities creating, in the sense that we saw many jobs that were considered as essential work. And so sometimes it's refugees or migrants doing this kind of services in healthcare services, for example, but also what we call the gig economy, so providing services such as Uber. So did you see other opportunities of this type emerging with the crisis, and that maybe changed the path of somebody who was on the way of the economic integration? Well, in reality, when I talked about personalized path, we wanted to help the people to understand their objectives, and not the stereotype of work for asylum seekers and refugees. So, unfortunately, our beneficiaries, not speaking Italian well, or maybe not having titles recognized in Italy, can only carry out certain types of tasks, for example, agriculture, or other types of jobs, or simpler jobs. In reality, it looks like a paradox, but very often during orientations, I ask the people to use the lockdown, to use this moment of stop, in order to think and what they desire, to think what they can offer. So the pandemic certainly reduced some of the possibilities, but provided us with a wider thought compared to what we could do. So it's the opportunity to get trained in order to reach the objectives that they set themselves. Thanks a lot. One question for you from Andrea Salvini. Andrea, can you hear me?
Sì, buongiorno.
Yes, I can hear you. Good afternoon.
Ci diamo del tu anche in italiano, allora volevo... Francesca, avevo una domanda
So,
per
Francesca,
te.
I had a question for you.
Innanzitutto, grazie mille per questa
First
presentazione
of all,
molto
thanks a
chiara
lot
che
for
conferma
this
un
very
po'
clear
le linee guida
presentation
che
that
anche
provides us
l'Organizzazione
with the
Internazionale del Lavoro
guidelines defined also by the International Labour Organization, the ones that are proposed in order to adapt employment services around the world. What struck me was the fact that one of the solutions was intensifying
il supporto da parte dei counselor, da parte dei job coach. Su questo, secondo me,
on this point, in my opinion,
perdonami la mia deformazione mentale da tecnico,
forgive
ma visto che la
my
ritengo
technical
un'esperienza
observation
molto
as a
importante, volevo
technician,
sapere se
but
eravate riusciti a
I
tracciare
would like
dei
to know whether you were
KPI,
able to
degli
trace
indicatori prima di tutto
KPIs,
per
so
quanto
first of
riguarda
all,
l'efficacia
indicators for
del
the
programma
efficacy
rispetto
of the
a un
project
eventuale gruppo di controllo o di altri membri
vis-à-vis a
del
control group
centro.
or other
E l'altra
members of
cosa
the
invece,
center.
sia
And the
a
other aspect,
livello quantitativo, ma anche per
both in quantitative
la tua impressione
terms,
personale
but
di
also for your
come e in che
personal
maniera
perception,
l'intensità di trattamento
how
per questo
the
tipo di
intensity
beneficiari può essere
of the
rapportata a quella che è
project for the
l'intensità di
beneficiaries
trattamento
could
del
be
counselor
compared to
per un
treatments of
disoccupato di
counselors
lunga durata,
for a long-term
di un centro per l'impiego italiano. Ecco,
unemployed people of
queste sono
an Italian employment center. So how
due
would you
domande.
define their position? These are my two
Sì,
questions.
adesso sicuramente è appena stato approvato
Certainly now
il piano di recupero, di recovery plan
the
in
recovery
Italia.
plan has
Questi
just
secondo
been
me
approved
sono
in
il supporto
Italy.
all'integrazione
And in my
nel
opinion,
mercato del
this is
lavoro,
a
è una
support
delle cose da
labor
proporre, è una maniera
integration
buona per
and
farlo,
something
è
to be
quella proprio
proposed
è quella proprio di avere dei
would
KPI,
be
degli
having
indicatori che
KPIs, so
possano
having
supportarne
indicators
l'efficacia.
that can
Grazie.
support the efficiency and effectiveness. Thanks. Thank you. I will try to answer your questions. So the first one, I will answer by saying that, in fact, in order for the results to be assessed, we have a specific entity. Rodolfo De Benedetti dealt with that for the entire process. It is for work. While as far as the second question is concerned, compared to with my experience, I can say that supporting these people in a constant way motivates them to reacquire the self-confidence that went lost during the years. The fact of providing them with the space and time to understand what they have to offer. Because sometimes it is concealed and not enough space, not enough room is given in order to understand the resources that people have to offer. So this support helps beneficiaries to recover their self-confidence and motivation, to become more independent, to feel more able to act as protagonists in the in the search of a job, and everything that is the social inclusion process. Because the fact of relating oneself with different people, other than the other people present in the reception center, can be a driver to finding new relationships also with people who are newly met.
Grazie Francesca.
Thank you very much, Francesca. Thanks a lot, Francesca. Thank you very much for your presentation. I'm having a look at the time, and we are running very late, so I suggest I see that Claudia is telling me that you can have a drink. If you want, you can continue this way. And Andrea, I will tell you that we'll have a shorter session. The second part will be shorter, of about 30 minutes, 40 minutes instead of 1 hour for the second part. Monica? Yes, you have the floor. I am a job coach, and my presentation is not there yet. Short. So I have to say that the best result as a job coach has been to see, such as in the videos, it's been a great satisfaction. She was a beneficiary of mine with Jeanette, and we obtained this great result. I have to say that the role of mediator, fantastic, because the mediator was really a bridge between a job mentor and a job coach. And so it was really delivering. And so we were lucky enough to have Jeanette, who had met the Saches, and when she saw her capacity and the fact of being able to insert her within this working context, we said, okay, she's our ideal candidate, she's our ideal beneficiary. So I will move on without following the PowerPoint. So what did we do? We had an interview, and we said that it was fundamental to expose her viewpoints. We prepared her for a job interview, so we supported her through this job interview, and we said it's a teamwork. By using WhatsApp, with all our beneficiaries, we created a guidance group with the name of the job coach, the beneficiary, and the mentor, saying to all of them that we are present all the time. We are available all the time when they need us. If they are not able to get in touch with the company because they do not have money in their phone, because they are not able to use or to write in Italian, then we can intervene and help them. We can really help them to build a bridge with the company. So the work of a job coach has been supported by mediators, and it's been very complex because we were between the job mentor passing the work with beneficiaries, then we took charge of that, and then with the reception centers, they were our interlocutors, because sometimes beneficiaries just disappeared, or they did not show up at work, or they were not answering to messages, to phone calls, and so their job has been extremely interesting. So that's why their collaboration was so important to obtain these results. So it's also important for the companies not to feel alone, to show them that we are present, because if the trainees have problems, we are available to help them. And let's see how, together with the beneficiaries, we could solve difficulties. As job coach and mediators, we also dealt with many practical aspects, for example, providing them with bus stops and bus lines, for example, and also PowerPoints that we have prepared. So we have taught them how important it is to observe punctuality. If a meeting, an interview is at 10:30, you cannot show up at 10:40 or at 11. It was a very important cultural change. Something else that we noticed with the job coaches anticipated this morning was the difficulty for women to be inserted. With Jeanette in particular, we followed several moms with children, with very young children. Some mothers were very good, but due to different reasons, the lack of help in taking care of the children, we did not have the possibility of inserting them in apprenticeships and training, because it's really a pity, because there were great potentials. So that's why during the job coach we were saying it's not a problem. We cannot insert them in training because they have a young child. It's not feasible, but we could explain them how to look for a job in Italy. And so by using WhatsApp, we could do inscriptions and register them to agencies. And so, of course, it's been much more difficult by using WhatsApp. But we could use all tools during WhatsApp at any time with mom that were breastfeeding. And so moms and friends who were taking out their children so as to carry out their activity. And so it's been a very interesting, that enriched us. It's been a very interesting experience. So we are happy with that. And it's been a challenge, an important challenge. So I will finish with these. I hope I was short enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I see that WhatsApp was key to most of you. Yes, it's everywhere, and we are so expert in creating WhatsApp groups and managing them. And during guidance and counseling, we were asking what they can do, and they may have not the right term of the tool, and we would go searching for it and posting the pictures, and then we would use it for the resume, because of course they needed to know the right terms, and it was so useful because we could track everything we were saying and posting, so we could decide to work. I mean, we worked across the board, anytime, anywhere, but it was so useful. So it's interesting because I can see that WhatsApp became a training tool in the end, because even here at the campus, we have this mobile learning, learning, because WhatsApp is one of the tools we use. And so I heard it mentioned in the different speeches, but interesting. I also hear it in other parts of the world. So it has become a crucial tool to keep in touch with the different participants, and in your case, with your beneficiaries, to be one step closer to the persons. Well, that's true, because when you create your group with beneficiaries, job coaches, job mentors, and mediators, they could send a vocal message in the group, and the mediator could help us understandings, and the communication could occur in real time. So we could be there for them. Last point, you also highlighted, concerned the challenge of integrating women when they have family responsibilities. And of course, they have more difficulties in entering the labor market. So you stressed the lack of support for them most of the times in the care of children. true, because many of them were so good. Maybe they were waiting for the confirmation of the enrollment of the child in the kindergarten, so that they could start the training courses, because otherwise it was impossible. There were no possibility to care for their children inside the training centers. So we may talk about that when the lessons learned, but the fact of providing such support in the vocational training centers could be an idea within this project, of course, because training support and social support should go hand by hand, because as we can see here from your examples, it is a reality, especially for women, because they are bearing the burden of family cares, because they're all alone. They're all alone. They have no one to help them, and they want to be integrated. They want to find a job because they need to have an income to send cash home. But on the other hand, they're stuck at home because they have no help in child caring. So this could be an idea for the future. Thank you. Thank you very much. I don't know whether there are other questions for her. If there aren't, I'm looking at the time too, and if you agree, you may have a coffee now. You can have a coffee, or Jeanette, you can take the floor. I feel the burden of responsibility because it was mentioned many times during the other speech. Okay, so that's my presentation, but I can't read it. Okay, anyway. Good. So I'm an intercultural mediator, and we played a crucial role because we were supporting both job coaches and job mentors, not only on the language side, but mostly on the cultural side, because we were there to eliminate the barriers. Because on one side, we had beneficiaries that had some cultural barriers with their coaches and mentors, and on the other side, coaches and mentors were unaware of specificities of the beneficiaries' culture. So we were accompanying both of them, actually. We were always present with the beneficiaries in any interview and meeting for them to become independent and autonomous. So that was just one part of our job, because we were also working with the services, the social services, for example, in the employment agencies or anagraphes or vital records, because they needed to have identity documents to participate in a traineeship. And they needed to have a series of documents, not only identity document. Sometimes we also had to contact the businesses to understand, for the business owners and employers to understand some behaviors of the beneficiaries. For example, sometimes they were calling us to tell us, well, they're slow, but we don't know why they're slow. So we had to explain the beneficiaries that time does not flow the same in all parts of the world. Here it flows much faster, and so that was our role too. But there were some problems, of course, and challenges. First and foremost, mistrust vis-a-vis operators, because we were foreigners for them, who were strangers, most of them fragile and vulnerable, and then the most vulnerable, for example, women victims of trafficking. So they are completely mistrusting us. So that was a real challenge. Distance guidance was so challenging because we were deprived of any interpersonal relationship. And then another challenge was on the part of the beneficiaries, failing to comply with the engagements. But that's a cultural problem. So I have always been available during my working time because I wanted to gain their trust. So before trusting job coaches and job mentors, they trusted us as mediators because we were closer to them, to their mindset, to their cultural background. Another solution we found was to help them with the knowledge of the language. We would just send them links to improve their languages or support in technologies they could use every day, for example, Zoom or WhatsApp calls. So at the beginning, it was something we had to do. So initially, video calls were challenging, but then they were so useful because we could meet many different people in the same day. So before the pandemic, we could have less meetings in one day because we needed to move from one center to the other, while WhatsApp calls helped us having maybe 7 or 6 meetings per day, and so we could meet the same people every week. So that was very positive, actually. So what I learned from this project, we need to be extremely cautious with such beneficiaries because we don't know nothing about their background. We must be very patient, very open, and very aware of their fragility. And we really need to sense the problems they might not voice directly. I also realized how crucial it is to build their capacities in order to bridge the refugees gap that was mentioned this morning. And something that came to my mind this morning is to work with them and to educate them to professional dignity. Otherwise, they might fall prey of underground economy, informal economy, and exploiters. So they really need to be aware that they do have a dignity. So, for example, the guys that worked in the Asti area in farming, and one boy.
Perché poi col suo job coach abbiamo cercato di lavorare molto su questo.
So hard because his coach and I worked so hard to make him understand that everybody can reach any goal. You need to really work on that, and you really work to construct your dignity. Thank you very much. Thank you, Janet, for your conclusion. So, of course, that's our bread and butter, because access to decent work is what we do every day, what we advocate every day. So labor rights and works that can help you build on your capacities. I know there's a question from Andrea, for you, of course.
Buongiorno, grazie mille per la presentazione.
Thank you for your
Innanzitutto una piccola pillola
presentation.
tecnica.
So,
Le ultime due presentazioni, anche quella
something
precedente, hanno
on the technical
mostrato
side,
come gli strumenti
last
di
two
profiling
presentations
statistico e di matching
showed
automatico
that
debbano sempre
automatic
essere
matching and statistic
comunque
profile tools
interfacciati con
must
gli
always
aspetti umani,
be
con
taken in connection
quella
with the
parte
human
di, we call
side.
it discretional counseling,
We call it discretional counseling.
discretional profiling, cioè un
Discretional
profiling che
profiling,
non
sorry.
guarda solamente
So
ai
a
dati
kind of
rilevati, ma
profiling
comunque
method
inserisce delle
looking not
variabili
only on the
discrezionali. Quindi
figures but also on discretional
sicuramente
variables.
ci sono degli aspetti,
So there are, for
molto
sure,
importanti. L'altra cosa invece
crucial aspects in
sulla
what
quale abbiamo lavorato
you
molto
said. Another aspect
nei
on which
programmi di reintegrazione
we worked a
in giro
lot
per il mondo è comunque
when dealing with
è comunque l'allineamento dei
integration and
servizi
placement
di
programs is
career guidance and counseling in senso stretto e i
aligning career
servizi di mental health.
guidance
Allora, su
counseling
questo
and mental
è
health
stato molto
services.
interessante l'ultima presentazione,
So your presentation, Jeanette, was
quest'idea
so interesting in
di
the
multi-layer
idea
vulnerabilities,
of
quest'idea che
multi-layer
spesso il
vulnerabilities,
beneficiario
the
ha
idea
vari
that
gradi di
the beneficiaries
vulnerabilità
might be
e tra
affected by
questi a
many
volte prima
different kind of
di quelli meramente
vulnerabilities.
occupazionali ci sono dei
And
problemi di trauma, ci
before
sono dei problemi di salute mentale. Allora, la
being
mia domanda, scusate se sono stato
a
lungo,
job
ma
seeker,
volevo anche cercare di
he or
ricostruire
she might have
quello
a
che possiamo
story
imparare noi
of traumas.
dalla vostra esperienza.
So,
Volevo
sorry for
capire
this long
quando è
introduction,
stata
but
formalizzata
I'd like to know
l'inserimento di alcuni beneficiari in servizi di counseling
if
propriamente
the
di mental health, cioè
placement,
da parte
if you had
di operatori sociali
some beneficiaries
specializzati in questo tipo di supporto
using
rispetto
mental health
a un
services,
generico
mental health
job counseling e
counseling
quanto
in
specializzati
addition to the
e se
job
c'era un
counseling.
grado
And
di
if
targeting, di
so,
specializzazione dei vari
if
servizi, da quelli che
there
magari
was
avevano bisogno di un traumatologo
there
interculturale
were
rispetto a
specific
quelli invece
requests. So, for example,
che hanno
intercultural trauma
ehm,
experts
disturbi della
was
personalità
required, or
o
people
problemi di polarità o
with
schizofrenia. Ecco, grazie mille. Scusate per la
personality
lunghezza della domanda.
troubles
Molto
or
interessante tutte e
behavioral
due le ultime presentazioni.
disorders or things like that. Sorry. I hope I can answer, but usually this is managed by the reception center, not by us. Some of our beneficiaries just drop out the project, and the reception center's operator told us that it was because of psychological disorders or issues. I know that there's a project called SAMI, which deals with refugees with mental traumas. So I was involved in some parts of mental counseling, but just some of them. I gave them some information and I refer them to other services, but we were not in charge of them because we're only in charge of job counseling and training. So the person who coordinated the sample told me that we had no persons affected by psychiatric issues. At least non-diagnosed, because some of my beneficiaries, as I told you, were said to have these problems, but they were not diagnosed anyway. Thank you. Thank you, Jeanette, and thanks, Andrea, for your question. Okay, Carla, you have the floor. So, good afternoon. My name is Carla Tonelli, and I'm part of Info Copecipa, and I've been here since 2021. So I was both a job coach and coach for recognition of professional experience. And I was very lucky because when I came when I came to InfoCope, I found a very nice colleague, and it was very impressive for me because I am a woman from the last century, and believe me, I've been working for many years, and it was so good for me to see what happens in this project, seeing the results of the beneficiaries, like the ones we saw in the video, is so impressive for me. Sometimes it's due to luck. Sometimes it's due to hard work, and because of recognition of professional experience is based on listening, narrative, and feedback to the people, it is even more crucial, because sometimes when we speak, we do not listen to what we say. And when other people use our same words, this may trigger change. So I heard everybody talking about the beneficiaries as vulnerable, fragile. So may I say that I share the opinions of my colleagues, but I want to change the paradigm, because the recognition of professional experience starts from the capacities of the people. So any individual in the world, children, women, men, elderly people, young people, anybody, disabled people, mentally and physically disabled people. So any of us can tell a story using words and images. So there are no borders as compared to, there's no limits to the difficulties, but there are also no limits to the resources we can find and the abilities and capacities that people can find, even unwillingly, because maybe they had to take care of an ill person, or in different situations of our lives. So we use competencies, dynamics, and processes that are different for each of us. So I've worked with people of any kind, with younger people and older people, in this process of recognition of professional experience, in order for these capacities to emerge. So when this process is taken up, it includes 6 steps over 2 months and a half. So time is the same for all of us. And there's a sort of different kind of time that flows in a different way, which is a time that entails the change inside us. So, because we do not want to push on this second time, we really need to take the right ordinary time. Of course, we really need to set milestones, but we really need to take our time to go over the different steps. And we decided to set 4 steps.
So the first step is one of the objectives and aims, so the fact of helping people. So we have already explained what we mean by objective. So it's not within 6 years' time, but it can be 6 months. So what do I want to do in my life? And then with the second step, when it is possible to make the stories emerge, stories that a person has lived, what in the normal life is life panorama that for these people that we consider fragile, but I don't know how fragile they are, because these women, I can tell you, are so brave, so strong, and I might have difficulties in their shoes, so it's difficult to define them fragile. So there's a fragile of social economic conditions that they experience, but then I would talk about fragile conditions and not general fragility. So like a straight definition for a person. So this kind of storytelling that we have transformed, because some had difficulties in getting back and talking about these stories of their past. So we all have memories, we all have childhood memories. Some people who rooted themselves through migration. They removed themselves from nature, relationships, colors, smells, flavors. And then the analysis of the experience. So analyzing all their soft skills. And formalization that they have made through reading poetry, singing songs from their lands, playing instruments, doing a patchwork of pictures or cutouts from magazines, telling their lives. All these has a red thread, which at the beginning of the project is the sharing of a view. So when you meet with many people, you need to see the respect, the words and the contents of each one. Also the fact that there is that the nature of what they tell is confidential, so there is a private nature. And then responsibility, because everyone is responsible for their own path, and suspension of judgment, non-judgment. So we have had the fundamental adaptation. Of course, the fact that people have to accept to enter into play. This is done also when the colors, when the environment is important. We have all done it. We've done it online via Zoom and via WhatsApp, and I can say that results were wonderful, have been wonderful. I have appreciated, the mediators are present, I appreciated the cultural mediation in job coaching, in the recognition of prior learning that had to be brought back to the people with the same words. In mediation was more difficult because mediators tend to enter, because of their profile, while acknowledgement works on why did I do it, how did I do it, and how was I equipped to do it. So this difficulty that we have experienced in the mediation of non-faithful restitution of one's word, and also an initial gap as to the promotion of this kind of project. I believe this is one of the few projects in Europe where the people supporting the path of recognition of prior learning need to be knowledgeable about that. So despite it was us and we produced a video, brought difficulties in the initial participation. Certainly the pandemic did not help. And this was a further challenge that we had to face. So I will conclude by saying that in a learning process, in an education process of adults, we learn mutually. We learn the ones from the others. So it's like a communicating vessels. And I will leave you with some of the words at the end of the experience. We asked the people, the beneficiaries, what is your lesson? What did you learn? What are you taking home? And they said, I know better what I can do and I desire to do. It was a bit difficult for me, but now I see a direction. Time to think about me, to what I have done and what I can do. Now I see a direction to follow. Surprise, I have the power to change my life. As storytelling around the fire, smell of home, lightness, freedom, will to do and think that I can do it. So I would really like to thank these young people. They enriched me from a human point of view in a way that I cannot even say. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Carla.
English. Some refugees or migrants that you are working with that were maybe with a very high skill profile, but were not offered a position at the level of their skills, and that maybe had, have been confronted with low skilled work. How they feel, how they, is it a serious problem? How you follow up with these people? And what about their feelings and how you cope with that?
No, non è complicato perché la reconnaissance a chi lavora in differenti...
Quite complicated because skill recognition works with people working inside vocational change into a change with high skills, highly skilled people, but also with people who do not have skills or do not have, they have skills, and therefore they need a path to help them, to reactivate them, and to transfer a life project or work project. So the difficulty of working with people with a method. This method enables for an adaptation, both in terms of tools, so not only a verbal language, but also using different tools. So this difficulty did not occur, honestly. Thank you very much. We can now move on to Martha. Last but not least. Good evening.
Buonasera, anzi buon pomeriggio.
So good evening, good afternoon. I am Marta Marotta from Infor Ilia Academy. I have the task of providing you very briefly an overview of what the training has been in this project without getting you bored, because it's the last intervention, so I understand. And I hope I will be short, but touching upon all the essential points. We have worked in tight contact with Scuola Tecnico San Carlo. Here we have the director, and Cover FOP for the North East. And we have been the companies who dealt with training on the four corners of Piedmont. So Infor Elea for the southwest and southeast, the Scuola Tecniche San Carlo for the metropolitan area of Turin, and Cover FOP for northeast area of Piedmont. We were coordinated by other training agencies as far as the southwest, AFP Collina Antigiane, FISI Stedil, and Foral, and as far as Turin is concerned, FC Torino, Assoform Scuola Camerana, and an Assoform Cormeter. So the training path has not been easy, but I see that the task of each one of us has been quite difficult, quite hard. So anyway, we were able to obtain two successful training paths. One was concerning citizenship, and the other one was more practical, that concerned language and vocational laboratories, so workshops. So citizenship course provided for 20 hours training, and it tackled very interesting themes and sometimes burning ones, besides civic education, equal opportunities, safety, road rules, and different aspects. Short training that included the entire context where refugees are to live on a daily basis. And as far as the vocational workshops, we have found several aspects, and we understood the main need of refugees was linguistic training under several aspects, because many of the young people that we trained started from a very low educational level. So starting from the basis, starting from the foundation, basic codification of communication. And so through this type of training, we transferred knowledge, first of all, language knowledge, but also cross-cut knowledge, and in some cases also technical and professional knowledge. We activated some IT laboratories and also cooking laboratories, assistants, and so on and so forth. So the challenges that we found. So at the end of this event, we can say that the challenges were quite common, and certainly the pandemic and COVID, that I called as immobilizing pandemic, because that's the immobility to which this pandemic forced us. It was really a shock for training. And so in contexts where personal relationships and contact relationships, also visual content, such as the one that beneficiaries experience, started to to be impossible. So I cannot tell you the difficulties of distant learning, because one of the results of this challenge was some distant learning courses, so almost all civic education. And 31 editions were carried out online. And I tell you, it was really a challenge. It was a challenge in creating a group first, in setting up a group, in spurring them to participation, encouraging them to participate, and saying goodbye at the end of this journey, wishing each other a good life. So this was adapting to a challenge that made some barriers fall. And so we could count to unite people from several areas of the region, providing training from a distance, but also involving practical activities. And I wish I could have been there in presence, face to face, to help them to connect themselves, to use their microphones, but in the end we made it. Besides that, the pandemic shortened the period available for training, because in the end all editions were activated, started from April, and all laboratories started at the beginning of May. And we still have lessons going on, so they will finish in 2 days' time. So we really used all the possible time, but on the other hand, we really accelerated because time was running out. So the fact was the change scenario for hosting and receiving migrants. So we saw other colleagues explaining the evolution of the change, stating the difficulties and the decrease in numbers. All these had an effect on training activities. Another challenge, to use this word again, that was certainly key, was to raise school in the scale of priorities. Because many beneficiaries, almost all beneficiaries, have burning needs, primary needs, that needs to be met. For example, giving priority to work, even if not continuous, even if non-formal. But let's say that this priority that is devoted to work has a very important impact on training, and therefore planning trainings with days and time and respect of punctuality, that applies also for training, was difficult because, of course, when we had to collect apples, we had to go collect apples. And when it rained, well, it depended. I'm not coming to school if it rains, it depends. Well, this was a challenge. And so having a look at development, at time, temporary actions, for example, a training journey of 40 hours with a long-term perspective. Because today we're talking about a 40-hour education course, and tomorrow it can be something different, but it's important to make these young people and these adults to understand the importance of education that goes out throughout one's life. So solutions, we have mentioned them, so distance learning, implementation and optimization of contents, because sometimes students connected from mobile phones. It's also educational material, everything improved. so that it could be used via a smartphone. And very often, we had to organize courses and laboratories and workshops that were the ones that were more practical. And so this required presence. It would have been impossible to teach a language from the basis from a distance. And so these vocational workshops were used this way. And also the IT courses were delivered at the reception centers, so creating classes there and optimizing transportation and times and costs. And obviously, one of the constant solutions used was preparing a calendar and the contents, planning that based on beneficiaries. So let's say I have a class of 5 people. When you prefer, when can we organize these? Let's plan this calendar so that you are able to participate as much as possible, because the objective was participation. And not only. Thanks to this method, we were able to provide training maybe to few beneficiaries in a single class, but at different levels of education. And so even within the same class, it is necessary to provide different levels, so from basic levels to a bit more advanced levels, for example, for the knowledge of the language. Another solution, and Roberto Bezzeno knows it very well, the activation of babysitting activities during classes, so as to facilitate moms, so as to help the mothers who wanted to take a training course but had children to take care of. And so including also a babysitting service for those who wanted to take part into the course and for the duration of the training course.
So, about the main lessons learned, I'd like to close on this picture because it was taken in a language class held in Paesana in the province of Cuneo, in a reception center that was integrated in the project across the board. So we had to face many difficulties and challenges and heterogeneous situations. Nonetheless, we were rewarded from the satisfaction of the beneficiaries and the teachers. So that's our reward and the feedback we had from them. So when you see that everything works, it's very rewarding. So food for thoughts. Of course, I have much of it. First and foremost, designing a training course starting from the basic needs of the beneficiaries, which means focusing on their gaps in general, but in particular on their language gap, because knowing Italian language is crucial if you want to work in in Italy, sorry, and if you want to be a craftsman, you need to have some capacities that go even beyond that. And so we really need to focus on the real needs connected to the personal inclinations expressed. In my opinion, the project should be longer, actually. classes should be longer, because of course 40 hours courses are not a few, generally speaking, but they are not so much if you want to see slight improvement, especially with the language. But the takeaway message is that we needed to adjust to the challenges posed by the pandemic. So remote interviews and meetings, or designing face-to-face lessons so that it could be safe for everybody, the right time, the right place for everybody, at different levels. So different challenges at different levels. So may I thank all the partners once again, because it is a success for all of us. And let's hope that we can work together again in other projects to go on along this path of inclusion and interaction in the society and in the labor market for asylum seekers and refugees. Thank you very much. Thank you, Marta. There's a question from a participant from Cape Town, Fortune. So two questions. One, how could you overcome the language barrier? And secondly, the use of smartphone. So maybe there's only one smartphone in one family, and so they may have difficulties in using it. Did you find these obstacles? Well, we just bypassed language barriers by using languages other than Italian. So sometimes different beneficiaries could speak different languages like French, English, or Spanish, and that helped us communicate rather well. As for the use of smartphones, well, the example you made was a reality. In some reception centers, there were people in the same class, and so they could use one smartphone for 2 or 3 people. And this allowed us to overcome some technical problems, because maybe the smartphones were not cutting edge technology. So it happened many times, actually. So, and it helped a lot. But I'm not only talking about members of the same family. I'm talking about people who lived in the same reception center, followed the same classes, and although they were not members of the same family, they would attend our classes through the same smartphone. So a big round of applause for all our speakers, please, because their interventions were so driving and enriching. So thank you very much. So I'm almost voiceless, actually. I have 20 minutes to go. So without much ado, may I leave the floor to Andrea? Please be sharp. Use only 20 minutes and not more of that to make the sort of wrap up of the project. So the floor is yours. Thank you, Miriam. Thanks to the ITC-ILO for involving me and inviting me here. I'm very honored. I feel honored to
di aver ascoltato I vostri interventi.
be here with such committed people. So thank you very much.
Questo spunto per cercare
And may I start
lasciare in
from
eredità
your commitment
questa esperienza
to
a
summarize
chi
the
a chi
legacy
intraprenderà progetti
of
futuri.
this project for
Secondo
some
me
future
sono due le
experiences that may
dimensioni
be
che
similar.
dobbiamo tenere
In
in
my opinion,
considerazione. La prima è
there
la,
are two
la
dimensions in it.
replicabilità
First and
sulla
foremost,
stessa scala, cioè
the replicability
sulla
on the
scala
same scale for this project.
di
So,
progetti futuri sui quali
future
ci
projects
saranno nuovi tipi di
to be
beneficiari
implemented on
da accogliere e da integrare.
more
Quindi, secondo
beneficiaries
me il modello
needing
italiano,
integration. So the Italian model,
se
for
possiamo
me,
chiamarvi il modello
if I may
italiano,
call it this way,
si pone per la sua flessibilità.
is
Quindi mi
flexible.
ricordo
It has
l'attenzione non
proven to be
solo
flexible
alla persona e quindi
because
diciamo a questo
attention
profiling
is
discrezionale
drawn
fatto in
not
base
only
a
on
dei
the person, but
colloqui,
also on
invece
the discretional
rispetto ai sistemi di
file,
profiling fatti
which
su degli
is
indicatori
built up
statistici. Questo è molto bello, ma anche
also
sui
through
tempi.
personal interviews and not only on statistical data. And because of the
Mi ricordo
time
ancora
dedicated
quando si
to
parla di
the
capire
people,
il kairos, cioè il tempo del risveglio, il tempo
so,
opportuno, non solamente,
one of
non
you
solamente
has
il
talked
processo di
about Chronos
integrazione
and
come
Kairos, so
una
not
successione di
only
step
about the ticking clock,
meccanici
but also
che
of the
durano lo stesso
time
tempo per tutti, che hanno la stessa
that flows
intensità di
inside
trattamento
us for
per
the
tutti.
changes we live. So the intensity
Da una
of
parte,
time can be different in this second
da una parte mi metto adesso nei panni di chi dovrà scrivere un intervento
and then I try to walk in the
futuro
shoes of
su
those who
su
will
queste
have to
tematiche e mi
design
chiedo
future
quanto secondo voi
projects.
dobbiamo
And I
puntare su
wonder
un approccio
whether we have to
personalizzato
point towards a
basato
customized approach
su un'attenzione al caso singolo e quanto
based
invece è
on
possibile
the attention
in un certo
of a
modo
single case,
parametrizzare gli interventi cercando di
or
capire quali
if it's
sono i
possible
diversi
to
sottogruppi che avete
set up
incontrato, quali sono,
and design
anch'io uso
projects
un termine della
finding common
psicologia, quali sono gli
grounds
archetipi
in the
dei
different
diversi
groups.
tipi di
So
beneficiari
if we could
coi
found
quali
archetypes
vi siete
of the
confrontati.
beneficiaries
Questo è
you worked
questo è
with.
il
So
primo
this is
suggerimento
the first
che mi viene
suggestion.
in mente. L'altro invece è su una
Second,
questione di sequencing, cioè su una questione di come
about
diverse fasi
sequencing.
dell'intervento vengono
So the
messe a
way
sistema
in
o
which
contemporaneamente o
the
una
different steps
successiva
of the
all'altra.
project
Come forse
are
sapete, nel modello
designed.
tedesco,
Are they
dove sono
contemporary? Are
stati
they
accolti
in parallel, or are
974.000
they sequenced?
rifugiati con
In
un impegno
Germany, they
finanziario molto superiore a quello
welcomed
sostenuto dall'Italia. Parliamo di alcuni
574,000
punti del
refugees.
prodotto interno lordo
So
tedesco.
some
Il modello era
percentage
diverso.
point of their
I primi 12
GDP, and
mesi
they
erano
did it
dedicati
according
esclusivamente
to a different
all'apprendimento
model,
della lingua
because
tedesca.
first
Allora,
12 months was spent
il secondo
only on
spunto sul
learning
quale volevo
German language.
farvi ragionare è
So second hint for
sentite
you is
che
this.
mettere la lingua come prerequisito per altri
Do you
interventi
think that
di integrazione sul
language
mercato del
classes and
lavoro è una
language
cosa
knowledge
da prendere in considerazione,
could
oppure
be a prerequisite or
pensate che
requirement for any other
pensate
projects,
che
or
invece
do you
lingua
think
e mercato del lavoro vadano
that
fatte nella
language
stessa
and
fase?
courses
Ecco,
and
questi due spunti, se
vocational
posso
courses
raccogliere
could be
un'opinione
part of the same step. So should they be two different steps, like
uno
in
degli
Germany,
esperti
or could they
che è
be
intervenuto
one
prima,
single step? So
sarebbe utile
according
per
to one
tutti
of
quanti
the
per
experts
capire.
we heard before, it couldn't be like that, but I'd like to have some of your opinions. Well, I try to answer the first question you posed. in my opinion, the customized approach is crucial, because if I think of all of my group of mothers, I see that they
figlio che fino a 1 anno o 2 anni
take care for the child, and so they couldn't attend the course, while others were so attached to the children that they would never entrust somebody else their cares, because they would stay with them for at least 2 or 3 years, and they would just focus on their education for a while. Well, that's extremely useful. Thank you very much. And as for the sequencing,
in base alla vostra esperienza, qual è
based on your experience,
la
of course,
vostra reazione a questo modello alternativo dove per 12 mesi...
what do you think of the German model? I can answer that question. So I agree with Janet as for the first question. So offering customized plans may be more convenient. While for the second point, in an ideal world, language should be learned before job placement. However, this is not only possible, and we also see that in many cases, job placement can help improving the knowledge of the language. So it's both ways. I can give you another perspective, actually. So I have the perspective of training, and we realized that starting from the learning of language is basic, not only for job placement, but also for everyday life, because we have people who do not know Italian at all in some cases, or maybe there are people who understood that they have basic language that can, it's a sort of survival language, but in these cases, in both cases, there's no incentive to improve their knowledge, because this is blocking them from improving their social integration or their professional integration. So any of us can improve their knowledge of the language. And so this was just clear and present for us that without a better knowledge of the language, there were concepts that couldn't be understood, like citizenship, for example. So much more complex than just the concrete and material experience. So I am for the sequencing, so language first and then the rest, because of course it could also go in parallel, but
Grazie mille, due opinioni diverse, ma nessuno ha
two
la
different
risposta giusta.
opinions,
Qua
but of course
stiamo
there's no
cercando
magic
di
bullet
raccogliere,
here, so we are really trying
elementi per chi prenderà in eredità questo
gather
progetto
elements
in futuro.
as a future
Allora,
legacy for further projects.
sollevo altri 2 spunti di riflessione,
So,
stavolta
more
sul
food for
targeting,
thought
sulla
about
specializzazione
targeting.
Non dei beneficiari, ma dei differenti servizi di counseling. Come sapete, per esempio, nel modello australiano, i centri per l'impiego hanno fatto outsourcing di
employment
tutti
agencies that
i
have
servizi di counseling, a
outsourced
parte
all counseling
quelli di
services
registrazione
except
dei
for
disoccupati, quindi fanno solo compliance
unemployed people
della
registration. So
partecipazione ai programmi, e
they
invece hanno
only deal
pensato
with
di
the compliance and the
specializzare i
participation of
counseling
programs.
dandoli ad associazioni
So
specifiche, in modo che al non vedente, che il non vedente venga
they
che al non
they
vedente
wanted,
venga,
for example,
venga
specific
affidato a
persons
un
to
counselor
be
specializzato
followed
nell'integrazione
by
dei non vedenti,
specialized
oppure
counselors, for
persone che
example,
hanno avuto problemi con la
visually
dipendenza dalle
impaired
droghe,
people to
a
be followed
un'associazione
by specialized
che si
counselors,
occupi
or
di questa particolare
former
vulnerabilità.
drug
Quindi la
addicts
mia domanda è, in un
are
mondo ideale,
taken
di
up
nuovo,
from associations
sareste
that
più
have
per un
special
modello dove
expertise
un general
in that.
counseling
So
cerca di
would
coprire
you go for
diverse
this
forme di
kind
vulnerabilità, oppure a un sistema
of
di
model,
referral
which is
dove
a
la
sort of
persona
referral
venga
system,
indirizzata a
or
servizi di
for
counseling specifici?
an employment
Vi do un
service
quarto punto di
that
riflessione
can
su
do all
il
alone, and
riconoscimento
some
delle
more food for
competenze. Come
thought
sappiamo,
on recognition of professional
recognition of
experiences,
prior learning
or recognition of prior
può
learning,
essere
as we may call it.
impostato
As you know,
in due maniere. Una, in genere,
there
è quella
are two main
settoriale, dove
ways to
si
do
cerca
that.
di
So
capire
on
settore
the
per settore dell'economia,
sectoral
in genere per
view,
ogni settore
so
2
you
o 3
go sector
famiglie
by sector,
occupazionali, per ogni identificare 2 o 3 famiglie
you establish
occupazionali
2,
sulle
3
quali
occupational
riconoscere
families in which
le 4-5 competenze richieste dai datori di lavoro. L'altro
you
invece è
can
è un
include 4 or 5 competencies or skills
dove si parte
demanded by the
invece
employers. The other way
da capire cosa può fare il
starts from
beneficiario in base alla sua esperienza passata.
the
Io ritengo
knowledge of the beneficiary,
da una
from
parte
what they
importante
can do
considerare il
based
primo
on their
approccio,
prior
ma
experience.
nello stesso tempo, soprattutto
So it is
per la
important
popolazione
to
migrante,
consider the first approach, and
penso che
in
sia
particular for
veramente
migrant
importante
population,
capire come dare un valore
it's so
alla
useful
vita
to
passata, al vissuto
value
del
their prior
beneficiario nel
life,
momento in cui si trova in un ambiente
the
nuovo.
moment
Allora,
they
di
are
nuovo,
in a
in questo
new
terzo e quarto
environment.
spunto
So
di riflessione,
again,
se volete
can
condividere
any of
la vostra
you
visione del mondo
give us your opinion
con
about
sempre la
that,
consapevolezza
knowing, of
che
course,
non esiste una risposta giusta.
that there's no
Vi
magic
prego di
bullet, there's
intervenire.
no right or wrong answer.
I would like to say
Sì.
that your question calls to different levels, because you started
Quale?
by
La terza o la quarta?
so the third or the fourth question. Well, I have to say all questions. Well, the first one in a very peculiar way, focal, because you talk about the outsourcing in Australia, where the public good, so the public governance somehow, since you don't speak about that, remains in the background, and in fact you speak about compliance from public civil servants. So in an ideal way, what it counts is the interaction of public and private, observing each other's competencies. But when we talk about other countries, public governance is very important. It's very important in order to provide us with tools, where in a world where we have a dichotomy, when we have the means to train to understand, to decode a society that is ever more complex. And therefore, the more we get in touch with our subjects through an empowerment, we really need to have a governance, a public governance, so that everybody is able to start from the same level. This is what the public sector should do, and then the private sector could deal about more specialistic things. So the public sector does not have all the skills to do it. So this is my ideal world. So a participatory approach and a strong participation by the public sector. So as far as the recognition of knowledge, and then in Italy we came late, it was done only by sectors, we have to say that these two things can go hand in hand, because it's a little bit like efficientism, so competences for the sake of competences, and in my opinion, they are not so useful. So my competence is a value, and supporting certifications, people to certification, using those competencies at 360 degrees, because we know now, and this is told by employers and European statistics, that technical competencies count less and less. They have their specificity, but what makes the difference is the capacity of people to get into action, to stand stress, to be able to face different contents. And I believe all these factors. So very good questions, very interesting. Thank you. Andrea, we have one more intervention. So refer to what Carla has said. I would like to share what you said about governance. Maybe we provided the idea this afternoon of the narrative that has been different, that we have outsourced the services. So let's say that InfoWork is true. We have entrusted it to special knowledge, but in planning made by the public, it was important to keep all the activities in reception centers, so that we had an exchange of knowledge between public and private sectors. So what we really wanted was to have the public with their own operators and employment centers, and this morning our director explained the evolution of this center as well, and also the strengthening of knowledge of employment centers in Italy in this period. Somehow they had to be combined, so their professional knowledge has to be combined to the specific knowledge of cooperatives, for example, dealing with migrants. And so they had very important know-hows compared to the, considering the centers, or cultural mediators, or job coaching. So a public-private a network that was not only for outsourcing or not only governance, but to be operational. And certainly this not emerged largely this morning, but it did this afternoon, but it did this morning. So if we did not have this kind of coordination, this tight coordination with partners, with lead partners, with all the stakeholders, so mentors, job coach, and training agencies, in a continuous way, so as to adapt activities, I believe that this would not have been the same, and so results would have been different or more disappointing compared to what has been obtained. Thank you very much, Miranda. I'm looking at the time, and I think that it's a very good conclusion. In fact, finalizing, highlighting the importance of collaboration and coordination with the different partners, public and private partners. And I hope that, Andrea, you agree with me on this point. So I don't know whether you wish to add one or two words before closing this
Grazie.
meeting.
Innanzitutto io
Thanks a
volevo
lot.
dire che
First
ho
of all, I would like
partecipato
to say that I took
entrando in
part
punta di piedi
by stepping
in questa
in,
esperienza
tiptoeing in,
sicuramente dal contenuto umano
in this experience with very
molto
important
profondo.
human content.
Detto questo,
Having
io
said
penso
that, I believe
che una cosa che a volte è
that
difficile da vedere
something that
negli operatori che
sometimes
hanno
is
contatto
hard to
con il
see
beneficiario, che
with the
comunque
operators having contact with
queste cose sono
beneficiaries,
possibili perché
because these things are
qualcuno
possible because
a
somebody
livello nazionale decide di
at the
investire
national level decides to invest
in programmi di questo tipo, in
in programs
servizi
of
di
this
questo
type,
tipo.
in
Vi
services of
racconto un
this type.
aneddoto di
So I would like
10
to tell you a
secondi. Negli ultimi
story.
10 giorni ho
It will
dovuto
take 10 seconds.
convincere
Over the
un
past 10 days, I
governo di
had
un
to
paese di
convince a
23 milioni di
government
persone
of a country of
a
23 million
formare
people
6.000
to
counselors
train
e ovviamente il Ministero delle
6,000
Finanze mi ha
counselors. And
chiesto
the
gli
Ministry of
indicatori per i
Finance
quali io
asked
pensavo
me the indicators by which
che
I
questo
thought
era
this was
una maniera
a
efficace di
an efficient
interpretare
way to
i servizi per
interpret
l'impiego.
the
E quindi
employment centers.
forse sempre penso con l'intento di entrare in punta
So
di
always
piedi, ho cercato
stepping
di
in a light
leggere
way, I tried
quello che ho ascoltato attraverso questi
to
5 interventi,
to
alla luce,
interpret
insomma,
what
del
I
lavoro che ho
heard
fatto negli ultimi 10 giorni,
in these last
per
interventions,
cercare
to
proprio
the light of what I've done over the past 5
di
days,
dare valore a
so
questo,
as to try and
a
give
questo tipo di
value to
intervento.
this type of intervention.
Grazie mille, non voglio rubare
So thank
altro
you very
tempo
much. I don't want
e
to
ancora
take
onorato
you more time,
di
and
essere
it was
stato con voi
really
oggi
an
pomeriggio.
honor for
Grazie.
me to be with you this afternoon. Thanks a lot, Andrea. Thanks a lot. So you can, as you can hear, my voice has gone. I would just like one more time to take this opportunity to thank you all. We are more or less within times, and I would really like to thank Valeria, with whom I have worked for 3 years on this project. It's been a huge pleasure, and I hope there will be other opportunities. And Miranda, thank you very much. It's been very interesting to work with you on these and to listen to all these stories. I believe that in terms of the ILO, we often have more national overviews because we work on national policies, we work with national governments, and it's been very interesting to listen to these local realities and especially integration, so the work with the refugees, and therefore all the efforts that are made with the local authorities, associations, and the partners at the local level is very interesting and important. I know that there were many who took part in this event, national stakeholders that had the chance, I had the chance to train, but I'm sure that there is a lot that is done at the local level. And it's always important to bear in mind the role that these stakeholders have and the role they play with refugees and migrant workers. So it's very important to remind that. I also would like to thank for their availability and flexibility our 2 interpreters, and I've been working with them for many, many years, Eva, myself, and Barbara. And I hope it was not too hard for them to hear my voice. That is a bit harsh today. And thank you also to my colleagues for the work and to all participants who have been working with us. Thanks, Andrea, to you for being present also in this event. So I wish you a very nice evening, and I hope that we will meet again soon on this campus.